We're here with Chris Tafelski, Westfield. Hopefully you watched the first episode of summer training, but we're going to talk about fall training, pretty much when you go back to school and continue on from there. And with that, how do you handle the team going from summer into school, especially with the different time schedule?
Yeah, that I think it's an exciting time. Like first day of school, there's always like good buzz at practice after the first day. And but I think it is a stress because like everything about their day is changing at the same time. And so that is a good opportunity for us to like back off them a little bit in training. So usually our first I like to go to the Cherokee Challenge, which is the first Saturday. Typically, it's the Saturday after Labor Day, which tends to be the first Saturday after the first day of school. So it is also like an excuse to back off from training because we're going into our first meet and we want to have a good showing and all that. But so it's like kind of like there's like a double benefit to backing off there a little bit because they're adjusting everything. They're adjusting their wake up time, their bedtime, when they're eating, when they're running. You're going from the morning where typically we run in the morning during the summer, and then we go to running at 3 p.m., which could be the hottest time of day. And it's still technically, summer for 2.5 weeks until, the first day of autumn. And usually the weather doesn't break for another week after that. So, you are dealing with, some changes in running conditions and things like that too. So that takes a little bit of transition time. So we'll back off. If school starts on a Wednesday, we'll back off the volume for maybe a week until the following Wednesday, give them some time to get their bodies to adjust to a new schedule and things like that.
All right. So does the training change once you start all this competing compared to what you did in the summer?
So our summer is more kind of off the clock, running by feel. I think the conditions, like we talked about before, the conditions kind of necessitate that, where we're doing, we'll do fartleks and we'll say like this should feel like 5K effort. And we'll check in on it occasionally to make sure that 5K effort doesn't bleed into 2-mile pace where they're running too fast, because that one or two kids in a group feel excited and you gotta keep the reins on. And the same thing with the tempo runs. We do a lot of like run on field depending on the conditions and the humidity and stuff like that. Once the weather breaks, we can become a little bit more quantitative about it. And we start to very gradually transition to maybe some more race pace type efforts or some even faster than race pace efforts as we get through the competitive season going into like say the county meet, which would be like the third week of October. But a lot of like the big ideas of what we do, we keep them in place throughout the season. We'll go from a weekly long run over the summer, and then we'll gradually space them out more. When we get to September, maybe we'll do them every other week through like the middle of October, and then maybe we'll do every third week after that to create a little bit more space for some more race specific stuff. But the big ingredients that we do, they don't really ever come out. We may just up the emphasis. So like for most of what we do from like August and September, it's fartlek and tempo running for a good bit of that. We'll sprinkle in some 2-mile pace things at the end of a tempo run or something like that, maybe some 400s or whatever, just to get their bodies used to moving at that tempo, since we're going to be going into some racing and things like that.
So how do you pick your meets? Now, obviously, we know you pick the first meet and won, but is it the same meets each year, and also, do you have dual meets?
We do have dual meets. I believe we have 3 of them this year. They're more like batch meets, and they're not really scored by our county anymore. If they're scored, it's just coaches keeping track. There's no official conference isn't doing anything. But those are typically now like developmental meets. We will have one at Warrenenko Park, which is where we run our county championship. So typically we'll have our top groups kind of tempo that, because typically that's like a couple days before or after the shore coaches, and we don't need a full race effort in the midweek. But we do want the kids to be familiar with the layout of the course. So we will get over that. But So that's, our dual meets are typically more for our developmental kids, our freshmen. We want them running on the same course often enough to see development over the course of the year. So we'll choose our invites based on what courses we might see down the stretch, or what are some benchmark courses that we can compare to for later in the season. So we know that our JV and our freshmen are going to go to the Frost JV meet at Thompson, for example. So if it fits in the schedule, we'll go to their fall classic, or they do a class meet in September. We'll try to get those kids over that course once, if we can. Sometimes the calendar works out that way, sometimes it doesn't. For our varsity kids, we want them getting over the Bowdoin course, so we'll go to the Bowdoin meet. We typically go to that meet if we think that we have a team we're going to Bowdoin in September will benefit us in November. If you're outside of your conference, the shore coaches is the only opportunity to run Holmdel for the state meet. We'll train there often, but I think getting that once over in an actual race situation has value too. So we'll choose the shore as long as they're the only game in town for us to get over Holmdel. But the trend over the last, say, 15 years or so has been racing less often. I think that's a good thing for kids. I think young kids, freshmen in particular, I think the more they race, the better, because they need to learn where their red line actually is. They think they're at their red line in their first couple of races, and they're not. If a race is a 10 out of 10, they're probably running 7.5 or 8 for their first couple of races until they figure that out. So, mentally it might be a race, but physically it's not until they get enough reps. So the young kids, they'll race a lot. I want them running every dual meet, and then we can reach back and say, like, hey, remember that race? Okay, now your workouts are not going to feel that hard. Because we don't do a whole lot. The kids who race often, they're not going to do a lot of race pace specific workouts, because if they run all the dual meets and stuff, that's all the race specific work they need. And so we kind of, to simplify the explanation of the training for the kids is, you can get into all the lingo and stuff like that with kids, but typically with young kids, they don't need science. Talk to them. This workout's going to help you hold paces, right? So anything that's basically longer than or slower than your 5K or your 5K race pace, those paces support your ability to hold paces for longer. So this is a hold workout. This is going to develop your ability to hold that pace for longer before you can't sustain any longer. And then anything faster, those are like your hit workouts. We're going to get you to the point where you can hit paces that you couldn't previously hit. Right. And so, whatever you want to label them, a lot of it would just say, okay, there's a hit workout, there's a whole workout. That's the main emphasis that we're going for. This is why it matters. This is how it's going to make you better. Sound good? Good. Awesome. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what it should feel like. Let's get to it. The older kids, they want to know more. And you can get more technical with those kids.
Do you have a go-to workout in the fall, and why do you do it? In other words, say maybe a special workout that you do later in the season.
We used to. I've kind of moved away from it as kids remember their workouts, and as they get more serious and they log them. I don't want them racing the ghosts of their former selves of, oh, well, I remember I did this workout 2 years ago. I'm going to go out and I'm going to crush that. Well, one, it was 2 years ago, so you better be able to do that. But I don't want them racing in practice. I don't want them racing. Oh, I remember Charlie Stock did this, so I want to do that. And so some of our staples I've kind of taken out over time and replaced them with new staples, just because I don't want kids racing their practices to prove that they're getting better. So a lot of times when we get to those mid-season workouts, we'll kind of look at, okay, what have we done well in competition? What are some things let's design some workouts that are targeted toward either really like playing up our strengths or plugging in holes. And some of those workouts may differ significantly from kid to kid. You may have a kid who's like really got like top gears, really good on the track, in like the 8 and the 16, and then you might have some other kids who are really like even the 32 is too short for them on the track. And so those two kids, when you get to like your big workouts in the middle of the season, they might be doing totally different stuff depending on what their needs are. So really, we use our September and our early October races to kind of diagnose where we need to go. So the nice thing about recycling some of those workouts, maybe from like 3 years before, is the kids think it's new, but it's not. I'm just pulling this workout from 3 or 4 years ago, and they think it's new, but it's not. But it keeps them from really redlining workouts to prove to themselves that they're in shape. That's what racing is for, in my opinion.
I call that perfecting the practice rather than perfecting the race.
Yeah.
You race enough, and you know where you can cut corners, and if I push here and then I back off here, I can get a real, and they're not practicing the race anymore. They're practicing how to get the best time in the workout.
Yeah. That's where that can be the trap. We've got a couple of our staples that we do like year round. I've taken to the critical velocity stuff with the kids. I don't use that term that often with them. They've asked me, and I've explained it to them if they ask. But I really enjoy doing like repeat thousands, and the kids really enjoy doing it. We just take between 90 seconds and 2 minutes rest, and we'll do between 5 and 8 of those, depending on the kid and their experience level. The slower kids, if they do thousands, they're doing the most volume of anybody on the team because of how long it takes them to run 1,000. So maybe they'll do 8s. We'll extend out to 1,200s for kids who are like quite fast at those. And then when they start feeling like, hey, can I run these faster? No, you can do more of them though. Because what's our purpose here? We don't want that CV effort, which should be roughly what you could hold for a half hour, your 10K pace for your top kids, that could bleed into 5K pace work really easily. And so, can we go faster? No, but you can do one more. We can cut the rest down. We can go from 145 to 90 seconds or whatever, because this is the purpose of what we're doing, right? And if you can always reach back and point out, this is why we're doing this, and that's why this progression of the workout makes more sense than this one, then kids will be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And if you want to get faster, okay, maybe we'll experiment with faster ones when we get to winter track, or when we get to the spring, some new, like, to drop another term, like a macro cycle, so to speak. Then we'll go there. But especially in cross country, I think going with big intensity, I don't know. I think the trend recently has been to more volume and keeping the intensity under control. And I like that. And I think it keeps kids healthy. I think it keeps their recovery times between training sessions more manageable. And I think happy kids who are fresh are going to be much higher performing kids at the end.
Absolutely. All right. So then finally, does anything change when you're peaking? Do you back off intensity, mileage? You said you did say that you go to a long run like every 3 weeks instead of every week, 1 week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks. Do you back off anything else in that, say, the last 2 weeks?
I think the backing off on the volume, you can totally overdo that. Maybe when we get to, say, 10 days out from our focus, whatever our focus race of this season is, we get to about 7 to 10 days out, we might dial it back, but not a whole lot, maybe 20%. Because some kids, I think the speedster kids with the gears, I think they benefit more from tapering down significantly in their volume. But I think other kids, they're surprised how sluggish they feel when they do less running. I think that becomes their norm for a while. And then you take that norm away from them, and now their body's in a different state, and you think they'll be fresh, but I think a lot of times that can backfire. Maybe with regard to the workouts, we'll dial back their volume in the workouts, but their daily runs, they don't really change all that much.
Good. Thank you so much. It was so informative. And like I said before, good luck this season, and hopefully we'll see you on the podium again.
Thanks so much. Good luck to you as well.
Thank you, man.